cleaner whispered in Japanese, "Don't eat that." And the millionaire was shocked. Thomas Chen was about to take the first bite of grilled salmon to his mouth when he felt a presence beside him and heard the words whispered in perfect Japanese that made his blood run cold. "Tabenaide kudasai," whispered a woman's voice right by his ear. "Please don't eat that." The 58-year-old businessman froze with his fork in midair, his eyes widening as he searched for the source of the voice. There stood a black woman in a cleaning uniform, around 45 years old, staring at him with an intensity that left him completely paralyzed. She held a cleaning cloth in her hands, pretending to wipe the nearby table, but her eyes were fixed on him with an urgency that couldn't be ignored. "Excuse me, but who are you?" Thomas asked in English, trying to maintain his composure in front of the 5 international investors sharing the table at the most exclusive restaurant in New York City. The woman simply shook her head slightly, signaling it wasn't the time for questions, and walked away toward the kitchen. Thomas felt a chill run down his spine. That Japanese accent was unmistakable, but how could a cleaning employee in the United States speak Japanese so fluently? "Is everything all right, Chen?" asked the British investor, noticing the sudden paleness that had overtaken the businessman's face. Yes, of course," Thomas replied, but he set the fork back on his plate. "I just remembered something important." He excused himself from the guests and discreetly followed the direction the woman had gone. In the hallway leading to the kitchen, she was waiting for him, leaning against the wall with her arms crossed. "You recognize my voice, didn't you?" she said in English now, but with a slight accent that confirmed his suspicions. How do you know Japanese? And why did you tell me not to eat?" "My name is Aiko Johnson. My mother was Yuki Tanaka from Osaka." Thomas felt his legs weaken. Yuki, the name he hadn't heard in almost 40 years. The name of the woman he had loved deeply during his studies in Japan in the 1980s. The woman he had promised to return to, but abandoned when business opportunities in the United States became too irresistible to ignore. "That's impossible," he murmured, running a hand through his graying hair. "Yuki didn't have children when you left." Aiko interrupted him, her eyes shining with a mix of pain and determination. "She found out she was pregnant a week after your plane took off from Narita. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out." Now, continuing. Thomas's world collapsed in that narrow hallway. He leaned against the wall, trying to process the information. A daughter. He had a daughter in Japan and never knew. Why did she never tell me? I sent letters, tried to stay in touch those first few months. "What letters?" Aiko asked bitterly. "My mother waited for news from you until I turned 5. After that, she stopped waiting." Thomas remembered the letters he had written, but never received a reply to. At the time, he thought Yuki had moved on, maybe even felt relieved he was gone. Now he understood something had gone very, very wrong. "Aiko, why are you telling me this now? And why did you warn me about the food?" The woman took a deep breath before answering. "Because you're in danger. For 3 months I've worked at this restaurant waiting for a chance to speak to you. I knew you came here often for business meetings. And today," she hesitated, "today someone tampered with your food." "Tampered? How?" "Peanut extract was mixed into the salmon sauce. You developed a severe peanut allergy after leaving Japan, didn't you? That was in your medical records that my mother got through an acquaintance who works at your routine lab." Thomas froze. It was true. He had developed a severe food allergy over the last 15 years, something very few people knew. An anaphylactic reaction could have sent him straight to the hospital or worse. "How does your mother have access to my medical records?" "Dr. Nakamura, who does your annual checkups, was her college classmate in Japan. When my mother found out you lived in New York City, she asked him to keep her informed about your health. Not to harm you, but because she never stopped caring." The revelation hit Thomas like a punch to the gut. Yuki still thought about him after all these years, and even more unsettling was the question he didn't want to ask but had to. "Who tampered with my food?" Aiko looked around, making sure they were alone. "Your wife, Mr. Chen. Jennifer was here this morning, talking to the chef. She said it was a special surprise for you, that she wanted to add a special touch to the dish. The floor seemed to vanish beneath Thomas's feet. Jennifer, his wife of 22 years, the woman he had built a family and a business empire with, had tried to... what exactly? Hurt him? Kill him? This doesn't make sense. Why would Jennifer do something like that? Because she knows about my mother, Aiko said softly. She's always known. How is that possible? 2 years ago, when my mother got very sick, she asked me to come to the United States to look for you. She wanted you to know about me before it was too late. I managed to get to your house a few times, but I never had the courage to ring the bell. One of those times, your wife saw me watching the house and came to talk to me. Thomas leaned harder against the wall, feeling his entire world crumbling. What did she say? At first, she was polite, asked if I was lost, if I needed help. But when I mentioned the name Yuki Tanaka and said I was your daughter, her face changed completely. She told me you had a new family now, that there was no room for ghosts from the past. And you left. I tried to explain I didn't want to cause trouble, that I just wanted you to know I existed. But she offered me money to leave and never come back. When I refused, she changed. Changed how? She said she would do anything to protect her family. Anything. And that if I ever tried to get close to you again, she'd make sure I regretted it. Thomas ran his hands over his face, trying to process everything. The woman he had lived with for over 2 decades, who had raised their 2 children, who knew his deepest fears and dreams, was she capable of attempted poisoning? Aiko, are you sure about what you're telling me? This is a very serious accusation. I saw her talking to the chef, Mr. Chen. I was cleaning the kitchen windows when she came in. She handed him a small vial and said it was a special seasoning you loved. When she left, I spoke to the chef. He showed me the vial. It had powdered peanut mixed with other seasonings. And did you say anything to him? I told him you had a severe peanut allergy. The chef panicked and said your wife hadn't mentioned that. He'd already prepared the sauce but agreed to make a new dish. Only... She hesitated. Only what? Only when I came back from cleaning the dining room, I saw 2 salmon plates in the pass. One clean and one with the contaminated sauce. And it was the contaminated one that was taken to your table. Thomas felt sick. If Aiko was right, Jennifer not only knew about her Japanese daughter, but had deliberately tried to harm him to protect what she considered her territory. Why are you telling me all this? You barely know me. Because you're my father, Aiko said simply, and because my mother taught me that family is family, no matter what happens. She may have felt abandoned, may have spent years resentful, but when she found out you were in danger, she didn't hesitate to ask me to protect you. How is she doing? Aiko's eyes filled with tears. She's in the hospital in Osaka, pancreatic cancer, advanced stage. The doctors say she has a few months, maybe less. Thomas felt as if an invisible fist was squeezing his heart. The woman he had loved more than life itself was dying, and he hadn't even known. I need to see her. That's what she wants most, but that's also why your wife is so desperate. She knows if you go to Japan, you might not come back the same. At that moment, a familiar voice echoed down the hallway. Thomas, where are you? It was Jennifer. Thomas looked at Aiko, who quickly picked up the cleaning cloth again and stepped away, pretending to wipe a painting on the wall. Jennifer appeared around the corner, her designer dress and expensive jewelry clashing with the service environment. She was a beautiful 52-year-old woman who maintained her flawless appearance through expensive treatments and rigorous exercise. But when her eyes met Aiko's, Thomas saw something he had never noticed before. A calculating coldness. There you are, she said, forcing a smile. The investors are asking where you went. It's not polite to keep guests waiting. I'll be right there, Thomas replied, carefully watching the interaction between the 2 women. Jennifer looked at Aiko with barely disguised contempt. And you, shouldn't you be cleaning tables instead of wandering the halls? Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry, Aiko replied softly, keeping her eyes down. Come on, Thomas, your food is getting cold. The businessman felt a chill. His food. The dish that had almost poisoned him. Actually, I'm not very hungry. How about we skip straight to dessert? Jennifer seemed annoyed for a moment, but quickly regained her composure. You weren't feeling well at lunch either. Maybe we should cancel the rest of today's meetings and go home. No, I'm fine. Let's finish the meeting. As they walked back to the main hall, Thomas couldn't take his eyes off Jennifer. How had he not noticed before? The signs were all there. The way she always changed the subject when he mentioned Japan, how she had forgotten to pass along certain international calls, how she insisted he get all his medical checkups with a specific doctor who apparently had connections to Yuki. Back at the table, Thomas pretended to be interested in the business talk, but his mind was elsewhere. He needed to confront Jennifer, but not here, not in front of the investors. And he needed to learn more about his daughter, about Yuki, about 40 years of buried truths. The meeting finally ended 2 hours later. The investors left satisfied with the numbers and proposals discussed, unaware that the host had spent the entire meeting reliving a past he thought was long buried. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. On the way home, Jennifer tried to keep up a normal conversation, commenting on the investors and the company's upcoming projects, but Thomas barely responded, lost in thoughts about Yuki and the daughter he had never known. You're very quiet today, Jennifer observed as they arrived at the mansion in the upscale Upper East Side neighborhood. Just thinking about business, he lied. Thomas, we need to talk. Her tone made him look at her more carefully. There was something different in her expression, a tension she couldn't hide. About what? About that woman at the restaurant, the cleaner. Thomas felt his stomach tighten. What woman? Don't pretend you don't know. I saw you talking in the hallway. They were now in the living room, an elegant space decorated with imported furniture and expensive artwork. Thomas's two daughters, 19-year-old Emily and 16-year-old Sophie, were still in college and high school, respectively. The house was quiet, just the two of them. She was just cleaning, Thomas said cautiously. Thomas, don't take me for a fool. I know who she is. The silence that followed was thick with tension. Finally, Thomas decided it was time to stop pretending. If you know who she is, then you know we have a lot to talk about. Jennifer sat down on the Italian leather armchair, her hands trembling slightly. I knew this day would come eventually. I just hoped it never would. Why did you never tell me you knew about Yuki? Because I was afraid, she admitted, tears forming in her eyes. Afraid you'd leave. Afraid you'd choose her over me. Jennifer, that happened decades before I met you. Yuki was already in the past when we got married. Was she? She challenged, her voice rising. Then why did you keep all those letters from her hidden in your office? Thomas froze, confused. What letters? I never received letters from Yuki after leaving Japan. Of course you did. They came at least once a month in the first years of our marriage, all addressed to you, all from Japan. And where are those letters now? Jennifer looked away. I intercepted them. You did what? I intercepted them, she shouted, standing up from the chair. I read them before you got home and hid them. Then I stopped reading them and just burned them. Thomas felt as if he'd been punched. His whole life, he'd believed Yuki had moved on, that she no longer cared about him. But in truth, she had tried to stay in touch, and Jennifer had sabotaged it all. For how many years? About 7 years. Then they stopped coming. My God, Jennifer, do you realize what you did? Yuki was pregnant. She tried to tell me about our daughter, and you destroyed it all. I protected our family, Jennifer shot back. I protected our daughters from having to share their father with a stranger on the other side of the world. That wasn't your decision to make, wasn't it? And what was the alternative? Let you find out you had a daughter in Japan and watch you leave. Let Emily and Sophie grow up without a father because you decided to play the hero and take care of a family you abandoned. Thomas felt anger rising in his chest, but also deep sadness. He could understand Jennifer's fear, but he couldn't forgive the manipulation. "And today? What did you do to my food today?" Jennifer paled. "How did you know?" "So it's true. You tried to poison me." "I didn't try to poison you," she defended desperately. I wanted you to get sick enough that you couldn't travel, so you couldn't go to Japan to see her." "Jennifer, you know my allergy can be fatal. I researched it. A small amount would only cause a mild reaction, some vomiting, maybe a trip to the hospital. Nothing serious." "You researched?" Thomas couldn't believe what he was hearing. "You researched the best way to make me sick. I panicked when that woman showed up at our house 2 years ago. She said her mother was dying and wanted you to know about your daughter. I offered money. I offered anything for her to leave, but she came back." "And when did she come back?" "She got the job at the restaurant. I knew it was only a matter of time before she found a way to talk to you. So I thought, if you got sick today, you wouldn't be able to take any international trips for the next few months. And maybe, in that time, she'd give up." Thomas looked at the woman he had shared over 2 decades of his life with and felt like he was staring at a stranger. "Didn't you think of just talking to me about this? And risk you deciding to leave? Thomas, I've loved you for 22 years. I built my entire life around you and our daughters. I couldn't just stand by and watch everything fall apart." "Everything you built was based on lies, Jennifer. You stole from me the right to know my daughter. You stole from Aiko the right to have a father. You stole from Yuki 40 years of—" He couldn't finish the sentence. The magnitude of what Jennifer had done was becoming clear, and it was devastating. "And now?" she asked quietly. "What are you going to do?" "I'm going to Japan today." "What about us? What about Emily and Sophie?" "You're my daughters, Jennifer. I love you unconditionally. But Aiko is also my daughter, and Yuki—" His voice broke. "Yuki was dying and I didn't even know." "Was?" "She has cancer. Terminal." Jennifer sank back into the armchair, the weight of the situation finally hitting her. "Thomas, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for everything. I didn't know how to handle it. I was so afraid of losing you. And now you've lost me anyway." At that moment, they heard the front door open and the voices of Emily and Sophie echoing through the hall. "Dad? Mom? We're home," Emily called. Thomas looked at Jennifer, both knowing they'd have to have a very difficult conversation with their daughters. But first, he needed to find Aiko again. "Where can I find our daughter?" Jennifer hesitated before answering. "She lives in a small apartment in Chinatown, Mott Street, number 437, apartment 23. "How do you know that?" "I had her followed," Jennifer admitted shamefully. "I wanted to make sure she wouldn't try to get close to the girls." Thomas shook his head, unable to believe the extent of his wife's manipulation. Then, without another word, he grabbed the car keys and headed for the door. "Dad, where are you going?" Emily asked as he passed through the living room. "I have to take care of something very important, sweetheart. Your mother will explain." "Thomas, wait!" Jennifer called, but he was already out the door. The drive to Chinatown gave him time to think. 40 years. 40 years lost. Aiko had grown up without a father. Yuki had raised a daughter alone, and he had built a family on a foundation of lies he hadn't even known existed. The neighborhood of Chinatown, with its concentration of Japanese descendants, always reminded him of Yuki. Now he understood why Aiko had chosen to live there. It must have been the place where she felt closest to her roots. The building was modest, an apartment complex from the 1980s, showing signs of age but well-maintained. Thomas climbed the stairs to the 2nd floor, his heart pounding. On the other side of that door was his daughter, a 40-year-old woman he should have watched grow up. He rang the bell and waited. Footsteps approached, and the door opened, revealing Aiko, now out of her work uniform, dressed in jeans and a simple blouse. "Mr. Chen, how did you— Your mother gave me your address. May I come in?" Aiko hesitated for a moment, then opened the door fully. The apartment was small but cozy, decorated with simple furniture and a few photographs. Thomas couldn't help but notice several photos of a woman he recognized immediately. Yuki at different ages, always smiling next to Aiko. "She looks beautiful in these pictures," he commented softly. Even when she's sick, she still smiles every day, Aiko replied. Would you like coffee, tea? Coffee, please. While Aiko prepared the coffee in the British-style kitchen, Thomas examined the photographs more closely. There were pictures of Aiko as a child, a teenager, graduating from university, always with Yuki by her side. In one photo, Aiko held a diploma. What did you study? Nursing. I work at Memorial Hospital when I'm not investigating businessmen, she said with a sad smile. Did you leave your job to come after me? I took an extended leave. When my mother found out she was sick, she made me promise to try to find you. Not for money or recognition, but because she wanted you to know you had a daughter who grew up loving the father she never knew. Thomas felt tears sting his eyes. Aiko, I swear I didn't know. If I had... I know, she gently interrupted, bringing 2 cups of coffee. My mother found out about the intercepted letters a few years ago when she started investigating why you never responded. She hired a private investigator who discovered the truth about your wife. And she never resented me. She did, for many years. But eventually she understood you were also a victim of the situation. She once told me she'd rather believe you would have come back if you'd known about me than accept that you simply didn't care. They sat on the small sofa, and Thomas noticed a photo album on the coffee table. May I look? Aiko nodded and opened the album. The first pages showed pictures of a pregnant Yuki, radiant despite being alone. Then came photos of Aiko's birth, her first steps, her first day of school. She kept an entire album of my childhood, Aiko explained, and she always told me stories about you. About how you met in university, the dreams you shared, how you promised to return. I truly meant to come back, Thomas said, his voice breaking. But opportunities started arising here, and I thought if I established myself in the United States first, I could bring Yuki over later. When I tried to reach out and got no response, I assumed she'd moved on. She waited until I turned 5. After that, she stopped waiting romantically, but she never stopped talking about you. Thomas turned a few more pages and found something that took his breath away. Newspaper clippings about his company, articles about his business successes, photos of him at social events. She followed my career religiously. She said it made her feel connected to you, to know you were doing well. When you married and had daughters, she cried for days, but she kept collecting news about you. My God. And I had no idea. They continued flipping through the album in silence. Thomas watched his daughter grow up through photographs, graduations, birthdays, trips with Yuki, moments of happiness he'd missed forever. Aiko, I know it's very late, but I'd like to be your father now. However I can, for as long as you'll let me. I'd like that too, she replied, tears streaming down her face. And I need to see Yuki. I need to apologize. I need to be with her. The doctors say she may have 2 months left. She's hospitalized, but on good days she can have visitors. Can you help me arrange the trip? Of course, but what about your family here? Thomas sighed deeply. My wife knew everything and chose to hide it. My daughters still don't know anything. It's going to be hard to explain, but they deserve to know the truth. At that moment, Thomas's phone rang. It was Emily. Dad, where are you? Mom is crying and won't say anything. Did something happen? Emily, I need you and Sophie to come meet me. There's something very important I have to tell you. Are you okay? You sound different. I'm fine, sweetheart. Can you come to Chinatown? I'll send you the address. Chinatown? What are you doing there? Meeting my other daughter. The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. Dad, what did you say? Come here, Emily. Bring Sophie, there's a lot to explain. 40 minutes later, Emily and Sophie rang the apartment doorbell. Thomas opened the door to his 2 confused and worried daughters. Dad? What's going on? Sophie asked, her 16 years making her seem even younger in the face of the situation. Girls, I want you to meet Aiko. She's your sister. Emily and Sophie looked from Thomas to Aiko, trying to process the information. What do you mean, our sister? Emily asked. Sit down, please. There's a lot to explain. The next 2 hours were emotionally exhausting. Thomas told them about Yuki, about the pregnancy he never knew about the intercepted letters, about Aiko coming to the United States to look for him. Emily and Sophie listened in silence, asking occasional questions, coming to terms with the fact that they had an older sister they'd never known. "And Mom knew about all this?" Sophie finally asked. "She did, and she tried to keep me from finding out." "That's why she was crying," Emily concluded. "She must be desperate." "Are you angry with me?" Thomas asked, fearing the answer. "Not at you, Dad," Emily replied. "You didn't know. But Mom, it's hard to understand how she could do this." "And now?" Sophie asked. "What happens next?" "I'm going to Japan to see Yuki. She's sick, very sick. And I want you to get to know Aiko properly if you'd like." The two younger sisters looked at Aiko, who had remained silent the entire time. "Did you grow up knowing about us?" Emily asked. "Yes. My mother always told me you existed. She showed me pictures of you from the newspapers. I always wanted to meet my sisters." "It must have been hard knowing your father had another family," Sophie observed with surprising maturity for her age. "It was. But my mother taught me not to hold resentment. She said you were deceived just as much as we were." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. It really helps those of us just starting out. Now, back to the story. At that moment, Thomas's phone rang again. It was Jennifer. "Thomas, please come home. We need to talk calmly." "There's nothing left to talk about, Jennifer. You lied to me for 2 decades. And you'll punish me forever for it. You'll destroy our family over a woman you loved 40 years ago. This isn't about Yuki. It's about trust. It's about honesty. It's about the fact that you tried to poison me today." "Dad, what did Mom do?" Emily asked, hearing only one side of the conversation. Thomas quickly explained the incident at the restaurant, leaving his daughters even more shocked. "She really did that?" Sophie asked, disbelieving. "Jennifer, I'm here with the girls. They know everything now. And yes, I'm going to Japan. If you try to stop me in any way, You'll what? Leave me? File for divorce?" Thomas looked at his 3 daughters, Emily and Sophie, waiting for his answer. Aiko watching a family fall apart right in front of her. "I don't know, Jennifer. I honestly don't know." He hung up the phone and sat down, running his hands through his hair. "Dad, you don't have to decide everything right now," Emily said softly. "Go see Aiko's mother. Handle that first, the rest can wait. Would you all come with me?" he asked, surprising everyone. "To Japan?" Sophie asked. "Yuki is well, she was very important to me, and she's your grandmother, even if you never met her. Aiko is your sister. Maybe it's time for our family to fully come together." Emily and Sophie exchanged glances, silently communicating as sisters do. "We'll go," Emily finally said, "but Mom won't like it. Mom will have to accept it. She created this situation with her lies." "What about me?" Aiko asked hesitantly. "Would you like me to go back with you?" "Of course. You're my daughter. That's what the company's private jet is for." That night, Thomas returned home to pack and say goodbye to Jennifer. She waited for him in the living room, her eyes red from crying. "So you're really going?" "I am. And the girls are coming with me. You're taking my daughters away from me to meet your ex-girlfriend. I'm taking our daughters to meet their dying grandmother and the sister they never knew they had." "And when will you come back? If you come back?" Thomas stopped packing and looked at her. "Jennifer, I don't know. You lied to me for 2 decades. You tried to poison me. You stole from me the chance to know my eldest daughter and be part of her life. How can I just pretend none of that happened?" "Because you love me," she said desperately. "Because we built a life together. Because I only did it out of fear of losing you." "But you lost me anyway, Jennifer. Not physically, not yet, but the trust is gone. And without trust, what's left? 22 years of marriage, 2 beautiful daughters, a company we built together." "Built on lies," he finished. Jennifer stood and moved closer to him. "Thomas, I know I was wrong. I know I did terrible things, but I can change. We can rebuild, maybe. But first, I need to do this. I need to be with Yuki in her final moments. I need to really get to know Aiko. I need to process everything I learned today. What if she dies? and you decide to stay in Japan forever. Then I would. But I don't think I'd do that. My daughters are here. My life is here. But Jennifer, if I come back, it'll be to a very different marriage. No lies, no manipulations, no secrets. I can accept that. Can you? Because if I find out you lied to me about anything else, if there are more secrets you've hidden, I won't give a second chance. Jennifer nodded vigorously. There's nothing else, I promise. But as Thomas finished packing, a nagging doubt troubled him. In over 2 decades of marriage, how many other truths had Jennifer kept from him? 3 days later, Thomas, Emily, Sophie, and Aiko were on a plane to Osaka. The 14-hour flight gave the sisters time to get to know each other better, and for Thomas to absorb the enormity of the change in his life. Aiko, what's your mother like? Emily asked as they flew over the Pacific. She's strong, even sick, smart, funny. She worked as an English teacher for British expats living in Japan. I think it was her way of staying connected to the United States, to your father. She never married again? Sophie asked. No. She had relationships over the years, but never married. She always said she'd already found the love of her life, and the rest would just be companionship. Thomas's heart ached. Yuki had wasted decades waiting for him, and he hadn't even known. What about you? Emily asked. Are you married? Do you have children? I'm divorced. I married at 25, but it only lasted 3 years. He wanted kids, and I think I was afraid of being a single mother like my mom was. But she wasn't a single mother, Sophie observed. She had you and raised you alone because she had no choice. It's different. Yeah, I know that now. Back then I was young and scared. When they finally landed in Osaka, Thomas felt a mix of anxiety and nostalgia. Japan had changed a lot since the 1980s, but some sense and sound still transported him back to the days he had spent with Yuki. Aiko took them straight from the airport to the hospital. On the way, she prepared them for what they would find. She's lost a lot of weight. The treatment left her weak, but when she heard you were coming, she became more excited than I've seen her in months. The hospital was modern and efficient, typical of Japanese standards. Aiko spoke to the nurses in Japanese, and then guided them through the halls until they reached a private room. She's awake and waiting for you, Aiko said, knocking softly on the door before entering. Okeri nasai, a frail voice said from inside the room. Welcome back. Thomas entered first and felt his legs weaken. There was Yuki, 40 years older, visibly ill, but with the same gentle eyes that had captivated him decades ago. Yuki-chan, he whispered, using the affectionate nickname he hadn't spoken in 40 years. Thomas-kun, she replied, trying to smile despite her weakness. He stepped closer to the bed, unsure whether to hug her, hold her hand, or just stand there. I'm sorry, were the first words he managed to say. I'm sorry for everything. Shh, she motioned for him to be quiet. There's nothing to apologize for. You didn't know. But I should have insisted more. I should have come back when you didn't answer my letters. What letters? She asked, confused. The letters I sent in the first few months after I went back to the United States. Yuki and Aiko exchanged glances. Thomas-kun, I never got any letters from you. The puzzle pieces fell into place in Thomas's mind. Jennifer hadn't just intercepted Yuki's letters, she had intercepted his too, preventing them from ever reaching their destination. The deception ran even deeper than he had imagined. You tried to write to me? Yuki asked, her words barely audible. I did, for almost a year. When I didn't get a reply, I thought you had moved on. Tears began to roll down Yuki's face. I waited so long. Thomas finally stepped close enough to take her hand. It was cold and fragile, but she squeezed his with more strength than he expected. Are these your daughters? Yuki asked, looking at Emily and Sophie, who stood hesitantly by the door. Yes. Emily is 19 and Sophie is 16. They're beautiful. They look like you. Emily and Sophie approached the bed, still in shock at seeing the grandmother they never knew they had. Oh, Ba-san, Emily said hesitantly, using the Japanese word for grandmother. Yuki smiled for the first time since they had arrived. I speak Japanese. Aiko taught us a few words on the trip, Sophie explained. Aiko is a good teacher. She's always been good at everything she does. They spent the next few hours talking, with Aiko translating when needed. Yuki shared stories about Aiko's childhood, showed old photos, and asked about Emily and Sophie's lives in the United States. She doesn't seem bitter, Emily remarked to Aiko when Yuki fell asleep after lunch. She isn't. At first, yes, she was angry and resentful, but with time she chose to forgive. She said anger only hurt her, not your father. That night at the hotel, Thomas couldn't sleep. He was processing not just the reunion with Yuki, but also the extent of Jennifer's lies. She hadn't just hidden Yuki's letters, she had actively sabotaged any chance of communication between them. The next day, Yuki was feeling stronger and asked to speak with Thomas alone. Thomas-kun, I want you to know I don't hold any resentment. I understand why you didn't come back. But Yuki, if I had known about Aiko, you would have come back? Of course, even if it meant giving up your opportunities in the United States. Thomas hesitated. It was a hard question to answer honestly. I'd like to believe so. I'd like to believe it too, but Thomas-kun, we were young. You had dreams, ambitions, maybe fate conspired so you could follow your path, and I could follow mine. You didn't follow your path. You stayed waiting for me. No, I didn't stay still. I raised our daughter, built a career, made friends, lived a full life. Yes, I waited for you romantically, but I never stopped living. And now? He asked, holding her hand. Now that I'm here, in these final moments, now I'm at peace. I'll leave knowing you met Aiko, that she has sisters who love her, that you didn't forget me completely. I never forgot you, Yuki. Not for a single day. I know. And that's why I can leave in peace. They sat in silence for a few minutes, just holding hands and absorbing each other's presence. Thomas-kun, your wife. We don't have to talk about her. Yes, we do. She did terrible things, but she loves you. And you have daughters together. Don't destroy your family because of me. It's not because of you. It's because of the lies, the broken trust. Trust can be rebuilt. True love is rare, Thomas-kun. If you still love your wife, fight for that love. And you? If things had been different, if I had come back 40 years ago, we would have been happy, she said without hesitation. But that's the past. Now you have to choose your future. That afternoon, Yuki's condition worsened quickly. The doctors explained it was normal in the final stages, moments of clarity followed by sudden decline. Thomas, Aiko, Emily, and Sophie took turns by her bedside. Yuki drifted in and out of consciousness, but when awake, she smiled at them all. Aiko-chan, she called to her daughter one of those times. Yes, Mama? Take care of your father, he'll need you. I will, Mama. And your sisters, they're good girls. You'll get along. Yes, we already are. Thomas-kun, she called. I'm here, Yuki. Thank you for coming back. Thank you for letting me meet our granddaughters. Thank you for forgiving an old fool. There's nothing to forgive. I love you, Thomas-kun. I always have. I love you too, Yuki-chan. She smiled one last time and closed her eyes. A few hours later, Yuki Tanaka passed peacefully, surrounded by the family she had waited 40 years to reunite. The funeral was simple, as she had requested. A few distant relatives, former students she had taught, and the new family she had helped bring together. Thomas spoke in hesitant Japanese, thanking Yuki for raising Aiko with so much love and for keeping a place in her heart for him all these decades. After the funeral, they stayed in Japan a few more days. Aiko showed them the house where she grew up, the school where Yuki had taught, the places that had been important to her mother. What will you do now? Thomas asked Aiko on their last night. I'd like to go back to the United States with you, if that's possible. Of course it's possible. You're my daughter. And your wife. Will she accept it? She'll have to. And if she doesn't, we'll have to rethink a lot of things. On the flight back to the United States, Thomas had plenty of time to think. The last 2 weeks had completely changed his life. He had said goodbye to a love that lasted 40 years, gained an adult daughter, and discovered that his marriage was built on lies deeper than he had ever imagined. Emily and Sophie were visibly changed by the experience. They had met an incredible grandmother, gained an older sister, and seen their father vulnerable in a way they had never witnessed before. "Dad, are you going to forgive Mama?" Sophie asked as they flew over the Pacific Ocean again. "I don't know, sweetheart. It's very complicated." "She made a lot of mistakes," Emily said, "but she was scared. People do stupid things when they're afraid." "That's true, but some things are hard to forgive. Obasan told you not to destroy your family because of her," Sophie reminded him. "And she was right, but I also can't pretend nothing happened." Aiko, who had been listening to the conversation, gently intervened. "Mr. Chen, Dad, my mother always taught me that forgiveness isn't about the other person. It's about freeing yourself from the weight of anger. Maybe you don't need to decide whether to forgive your wife or not. Maybe you just need to decide whether you want to keep carrying that anger." Thomas looked at his eldest daughter, surprised by her wisdom. "You're so much like your mother." "I hope so." When they landed in New York City, Jennifer was waiting for them at the airport. She was visibly nervous, unsure how she would be received by her daughters or Thomas. Emily and Sophie ran to hug her, despite everything that had happened. They still loved her, still needed her as their mother. "How was she?" was the first question Jennifer asked Thomas. "She passed peacefully. She forgave all of us. Even me. She said anger only hurts the one who carries it. That true love is rare and should be preserved." Jennifer looked at Aiko, who was standing slightly apart. "You must be Aiko." "Yes, Mom. I'm sorry. For everything. I had no right to do what I did." "I know," Aiko replied simply. "Will you live with us?" "If it's possible. I'd like to get to know my sisters better and my father." Jennifer nodded, even though it was hard for her. "Of course. You're welcome." The ride home was quiet. Everyone was processing the changes that lay ahead. That night, after Emily and Sophie had gone to bed and Aiko settled into the guest room, Thomas and Jennifer finally had the conversation they both knew was inevitable. "I want to try to rebuild our marriage," Jennifer said, "if you'll give me a chance." "It'll be hard, Jennifer, very hard." "I know, but I'm willing to do whatever it takes." "Including couples therapy, including being completely transparent about everything in your life, including accepting Aiko as part of our family?" "Yes, all of it. And if I find out there are more lies, more secrets?" "There aren't," she insisted. "I swear there aren't." Thomas looked into her eyes, searching for signs of dishonesty. "Jennifer, if we try to rebuild this, there won't be any more chances. This is the last one." "I understand. And Aiko stays. She's my daughter and will be treated as such." "I accept that. And no jealousy toward Yuki's memory. She's gone, but she was important to me and always will be. I will try." Thomas let out a deep sigh. "Then we'll try, but slowly, carefully, rebuilding trust brick by brick." Jennifer nodded, tears streaming down her face. "Thank you for giving me a chance. I'm doing this for us, for the girls, and for the wisdom of a woman who just left us, one who taught me that true love should be preserved even when it's hard." The months that followed were challenging. The family went to therapy, where painful truths were laid bare and worked through. Aiko gradually adapted to life in the United States, found work at a hospital, and grew closer to Emily and Sophie. Jennifer made a genuine effort to accept Aiko, though it was hard to have a constant reminder of the mistakes she had made. But over time, she began to see Aiko not as a threat, but as a blessing, a daughter who brought a different perspective and wisdom to the family. Thomas had difficult moments, especially when the longing for Yuki hit him hard, but Aiko helped him through those times, sharing memories of her mother and reminding him that Yuki wanted him to be happy. A year after Yuki's passing, the Chen family gathered for Sophie's 17th birthday. As he watched his three daughters laughing together in the kitchen, helping Jennifer prepare the cake, Thomas reflected on how life could change so drastically in such a short time. "What are you thinking about?" Aiko asked, joining him on the porch. "About how right your mother was about everything." "She usually was," Aiko smiled. She once told me life is too short to waste on anger and too precious not to fight for love. She was wise. And what about you? Are you happy? Thomas looked inside the house where his family was gathered, imperfect, marked by mistakes and forgiveness, but united. I'm learning to be happy again. And you? I feel whole for the first time in my life. I have a father, I have sisters, I have a family. It's more than I ever dreamed of. That night, after everyone had gone to bed, Thomas stepped into the garden and gazed at the stars. Somewhere, he knew Yuki was at peace, knowing she had helped reunite a family that time and circumstance had torn apart. He still had much work ahead to fully rebuild his trust in Jennifer, and there were still moments when he questioned whether he had made the right choice in giving their marriage a second chance. But as Yuki had said, true love was rare and worth fighting for. And so Thomas Chen learned that sometimes the greatest tragedies can lead to the greatest blessings, that forgiveness is more powerful than revenge, and that it's never too late for a family to find their way back to one another. The wisdom whispered in Japanese by a cleaner in a restaurant had saved more than his life. It had saved his soul and mended a heart broken 40 years ago. End of story. Now, tell us what you thought of this touching story and where you're watching from. Do you believe Thomas made the right choice in forgiving Jennifer? Share your honest thoughts in the comments. Thank you so much for joining us. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more heartfelt stories.